Professor Ian Clark is a leading Arctic paleoclimatologist who looks back into the Earth's temperature record tens of millions of years.
When we look at climate on long scales, we're looking for geological material that actually records climate. If we're to take an ice sample, for example, we use isotopes to reconstruct temperature, but the atmosphere that's imprisoned in that ice, we liberate, and then we look at the CO2 content.
Professor Clark and others have indeed discovered, as Al Gore says, a link between carbon dioxide and temperature. But what Al Gore doesn't say is that the link is the wrong way round.
So here we're looking at the ice core record from Vostok, and in the red we see temperature going up from early time to later time at a very key interval when we came out of a glaciation. And we see the temperature going up, and then we see the CO2 coming up. CO2 lags behind that increase. It's got an 800-year lag, so temperature is leading CO2 by 800 years.
There have now been several major ice core surveys. Every one of them shows the same thing. The temperature rises or falls, and then, after a few hundred years, carbon dioxide follows.
So obviously, carbon dioxide is not the cause of that warming. In fact, we can say that the warming produced the increase in carbon dioxide.
CO2 clearly cannot be causing temperature changes. It's a product of temperature. It's following temperature changes.
The ice core record goes to the very heart of the problem we have here. They said, if the CO2 increases in the atmosphere as a greenhouse gas, then the temperature will go up. But the ice core record shows exactly the opposite. So the fundamental assumption, the most fundamental assumption of the whole theory of climate change due to humans is shown to be wrong.
But how can it be that higher temperatures lead to more CO2 in the atmosphere? To understand this, we must first restate the obvious point that carbon dioxide is a natural gas produced by all living things.
Let's not forget the false left cover of, oh, the oil industries are backing all this research that disproves climate change. Alex, we have the articles where the head of Exxon, the head of Shell Oil, are calling for a carbon tax. And if you go to the smallest...
The head of BP.
Absolutely.
And now we have the internal emails from 2000 where they were... The Climate Center was taking orders from the oil companies and saying it's only part of their agenda to take over. Mm-hmm.
A third argument from those who quibble about the design of the carbon pollution reduction scheme is that the international design aspects of the scheme are flawed. Lord Christopher Monckton, a former advisor to Margaret Thatcher, was quoted this week in the Australian press by Janet Albrechtsen. Lord Monckton describes the potential Copenhagen Agreement as a plan to set up transnational government on a scale the world has never seen before. Enter the world government conspiracy theorists. Lord Monckton also publicly warned Americans that, and I quote him, "In the next few weeks, unless you stop it, your president will sign your freedom, your democracy and your prosperity away forever," unquote. Janet Albrechtsen, in her understated neoconservative way, refers to the potential Copenhagen Agreement as a UN power grab. This gaggle of world government conspiracy theorists are so far out there on the far right that they rub up next to the global anarchists on the far left. Those who argue that any multilateral action is by definition evil. Those who argue that climate change does not represent a global market failure. Those who argue that somehow the market will magically solve the problem in a way in which it hasn't solved the problem so far. And that uncoordinated national actions will somehow fix the problem, without answering the basic logical question of how can we deal with an existential threat, an existential challenge for the whole planet in the long term, one which lies beyond the capacity of any individual national action to address. The climate change deniers now form the comfortable bedfellows of the global conspiracy theorists, in total bald-faced denial of global scientific, economic and environmental reality. These arguments, thinly veiled attempts to create a new climate change global conspiracy theory, are now being used in Australia. Like the arguments from climate change deniers, these arguments have zero basis in the evidence.
So that's clip number one, but we have Herman Van Rompuy and everybody else saying this is global government, and then he's calling us conspiracy theorists for saying it.
And then talking tongue-in-cheek, let me just read a quote from that. Without answering the basic logical question of how can we deal with the existential challenge for the whole planet, which lies beyond the capacity of any individual national action to address. Right there, he acknowledges, yes, we are setting up a world government, but we're global government conspiracy theorists, Alex, and we're in bed with climate change denial now. It's all semantics. It's all word games. The guy admits it to you as he denounces it. That's their game.
Let's play Van Rompuy. Here it is.
2009 is also the first year of global governance, with the establishment of the G20 in the middle of the financial crisis. The climate conference in Copenhagen is another step towards the global management of our planet. Our mission, our presidency, is one of hope.
Now, we could play Al Gore saying it, too. We could read out of the treaty. We have the London Guardian saying it's world government, but that it's a good thing. And we have them saying the IMF and World Bank will be the world government. I mean, we've always said the bankers are going to set up world government for themselves. Why did we know that? Because David Rockefeller wrote books about it and gave speech after speech saying it. But see, they have such disdain for the public, and I guess it works. They say global government doesn't exist, we're just setting up global governance.
Yeah, it's a word game. And when you say global governance, people like George Monbiot jump out and say, this is the best thing ever. We'll get 25 other academics to sign on to it. Hey, I'll write a book called The New World Order. But then when you expose what the New World Order really is, what global government really means, it means a carbon tax. It means a tattletale society. It means the implementation of their cashless society control grid. In the Netherlands, they have passed the law where all cars will have GPS systems and be